And you are live.
This is the April 21st meeting of the Community Services and Personnel Committee. I'm calling the meeting to order at 7:01. First item on the agenda is roll call, and we have tonight, we have Greg Burnett, Dominique Johnson, Tom Keegan, Diana Revolus, Kadeem Roberts has just joined us, I see. Hi, Kadeem. And Nick Sachinelli. All members of the committee are present tonight. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Do we have anyone who would like to speak?
I do have Diane Lauricella with their digital hand raised.
Diane, yeah, you have your talking permitted, so go ahead.
Good evening, Chairman Smith and all council people. For the record, Diane Lauricella. I wanted to speak tonight about one of your agenda items related to the grant manager, or the grant position rather. First of all, I am very much in favor and actually had suggested for the last few years that a full-time position be shifted to the finance department because of their usual efforts to document and have financials available and monitor. So I'm in favor of that. But what I would like you to consider tonight is a possible alternative to what looks like is being proposed by the personnel chief and others. And that is to take a look at having a change in the title of this position to be not just a coordinator, but to be a grant professional, with the intent of them paying for their own job, but also adding eventually people to assist, and when needed to of course request department wordsmithing from the experts in each of the departments. So I would like to make sure that before you make a decision on this, and it won't take a long time for additional review, that you take a look and see how other towns and cities have handled their grant work. Especially, I offer the city of Bridgeport, Stamford, Greenwich, and also Newtown, because they handle them differently. And of course, you should have the benefit to make an informed choice by having more than one track. Right from the beginning, I've been interested in this position because of the fact that it was a combination back 3 years ago. I am on the record at a personnel committee meeting when it was thought to combine half of half public relations and half grant. I felt that there's plenty of grants out there that we were not seeking. You were told in the minutes that that Josh has been right on top of all possible grants. That is just not so. And the reason I'm saying this is because he only spent less than half of his time searching for grants. He relied on department people that had other jobs to do. Being the grant writer is in many of the different departments is not their only job. And it is an art and a science. So I believe that first you need to get a list from Catherine, when Catherine Podleski was the full-time grant manager, and you need a list from Josh himself before you make any decisions about this. I know for a fact that other towns have secured hundreds of thousands of dollars in energy and environmental grants. That has not kept up with what I've read the city of Norwalk has received. I know we have definitely gotten some grants written by different department heads over time, but other towns, I feel, are eating our lunch because we don't have a strategic full-time grant professional that is more than just monitoring what other non-grant professionals come up with. We need someone who has proven track record in an urban environment to handle all the facets of grant securing, finding the grants, helping write the grants, using department specialists when needed for the wordsmithing, but then tracking the grants, writing updates of the grants. There's a lot more to grant writing than just being a coordinator. A city of our size has missed out on hundreds of thousands of dollars of grants. I think that this program plan needs to have another look at alternative way to handle grants in a comprehensive fashion. And lastly, I would have loved to have seen a copy of the draft that might be before you. As a citizen and as an interested citizen, I could not find a copy of the draft. So I ask that you do not decide on this tonight. I think you should go back to the drawing board. I appreciate the efforts being made, and I am very pleased you're going to, the mayor's office and you are considering shifting it to the finance department. I have not read Mr. Dachowitz's plans on this because they were not available for me as a citizen to read. And I ask that you consider also having a public hearing to discuss this, because many of us have worked with grant people in the past, and we may have other alternatives and ideas that could be a benefit to your discussions tonight. So I thank you for giving me the time to express this. I have been a long time person of interest in helping my city secure money that I see other people in the energy and environment, professionals that I associate with and have worked with in other cities and towns in Connecticut, securing money that we should secure to help us run our city better and also to reduce costs to the taxpayer. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Ms. Lauricella. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of March 17th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Mr. Burnett? Changes, additions, corrections? Mr. Burnett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see one change under where it lists under the attendees under other, the title for Mr. Kelvin Ayala is Director of Economic Development, not Director of Real Estate Development.
Okay, anyone else? I have one change on page, oh, hold on. There it is. It's on page 5, second paragraph, last sentence. Ms. Smith said to Ms. Revolus that it is one thing to talk about the problem, but it is another to address it, not to live it. And so the fact that we want action, not just talk. So just to clarify that. Ms. Johnson.
Yes, and I just have a spelling correction on page 3, second last paragraph. Under Mr. Burnett asked Mr. Ayala, it's lens should be spelled L-E-N-S, no E on the end.
Okay.
I believe.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor of the minutes as amended? Raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, minutes pass unanimously. All right, next item on the agenda. Under action items, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all documents necessary to accept the United Way of Coastal Fairfield County COVID Relief Town Residents in Need Grant in the amount of $4,000. Do I have a motion? Mr. Roberts. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Daniels to address, just in terms of the way the funds will operate. So, Mr. Daniels.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, Common Council members. So I have before you the United Way of Coastal Fairfield County, which Norwalk is a part of, has received funding, and they are granting every town and city in Fairfield County $4,000 dedicated to the municipality's social services department. While we here in the city do not call the department social services, we are certainly, the comparison, if you will, of the social services department. And so I have before you the $4,000. The funding through the United Way is to support people struggling with mental health or in need of emergency financial support. What we have decided to do in consultation with United Way that, as you all know, the city of Norwalk is the designated youth services bureau through our JRB program, which is the juvenile diversion program. And if you recall, I presented and Jason presented to you all some time ago. So I know COVID, it was like, when was that? But one of the areas that was always a concern of mine is mental health. And so this most certainly fits, and the United Way has approved us to support. We will support that, and many of the families are struggling. Many of the families have a lot of needs, and specifically, we have designated this funding to help with co-pays. One of the things we also observe is that insurances, and sometimes even private insurance, while we don't see that often through the families that we serve, it's mostly families that are using state insurance, psychiatric evaluations. And so while it's definitely not a, well, it's a grant, and while we know it doesn't cover a lot, but we certainly want to use it, and we certainly want to help the families that we can. And we calculated between about 5 to 6 families that that this money will help. If they didn't have this money, they would not, quite frankly, receive the services, or would be on a sliding scale that they would have to struggle themselves. And so the $4,000 is timely. It most certainly could be used and just help a few families. While it doesn't help a lot, it can just help a few families with mental health support. So I'm asking you all to allow us to receive this funding to help families, in particular the youth that are through the juvenile program, with mental health support service, and helping them kind of subsidize the services that they need.
Any questions? Mr. Burnett?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I did have one question. Is this I'm assuming this is a one-time grant, and the services that we're going to be providing did not exist before. So in the event that we do not receive the grant next year, will the services go away, or will we look to include those going forward as part of our ongoing budget?
Well, no, it's not a service. This is really, so pre this finance and forever, the team is just really trying to help families figure out how to best pay for mental health services, whether that's a sliding scale, whether that's through a subsidy from the clinic. So using the tools that are available. So this small amount just will help a few families to say, at least you won't have a bill for this particular service for this time. So this is a one-time only grant helping specific families in this time.
Thank you.
It's not a large amount of money, but any amount of money is helpful right
I
now.
said, we'll take it. I
Yeah.
said, most certainly we'll take it. If it can help a few families, we'll take it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Right. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, and that will move on to the council. Next item on the agenda, discussion, updates, and presentation on child and family resources by Mr. Daniels.
Thank
our
you.
Services.
So we continue to stay busy. So one of the things that I'm working on now is looking at, because a lot of questions has come up, specifically, what are the services that the city provides to its constituents and to its residents. So I've been working on that. So tonight, I'm going to present to you a slide deck specifically around compiling and quite frankly, inventorying specifically services that are focused on children and their families. So I'm hopeful that once this goes online, also Norwalkers, and we plan to figure out how to put it on our website, et cetera. But I'm hoping that families will be able to kind of see a synthesized way of what are the services provided to the city. And then I'll give you an update on the equity and justice work and some other things that we talked about a long time ago that I'm really excited that, Mayor Rowland has said, well, COVID has definitely slowed us down, but we got to start moving. And so I picked up a couple of things that I presented to you when I first arrived, when we were downstairs, even when personnel was downstairs. And so a year later, I'm proud to share the progress, and, within COVID, we're still moving. So this is an overview of kind of the things that we're doing. And I hope our city can feel proud of that. We are making strides with this restructuring under my leadership in the community services. So I'm going to share my screen. Jeff, I need access.
You have it now.
Thank you. Can everyone see that? You should see some boots, some rain boots.
Got it.
Which is what happened today. So tonight I want to share, what are the specific city-sponsored and or administered program initiatives that impact that our residents, our constituents can utilize emanating out of City Hall. So just want to remind everyone, our mission statement to increase and sustain the social well-being of health of all Norwalk residents. My specific charge is to unify initiatives and programs that affect our constituents, provide oversight and administrative support to our internal city departments, and also identify the resources and partnerships more on a macro level around what are the needs and services that as a city and how we interplay and can work with our nonprofit community, which is a safety net, to identify strategically what are those emerging needs and how we can support our residents. And so I like this slide to kind of synthesize what we do. We help. We are community services. So, and I'm also working on branding, so I'm kind of practicing on you guys as well. What is community services? We are the city departments that directly affect the social well-being and health of Norwalk residents, including early childhood, health, human relations and fair rent, human services, library, and youth services. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but when we talk about our health department, they do a great work, and we all know our public health department has been called upon and has been the lead in helping us mitigate the pandemic, educating, informing us, and now we are full speed ahead with our COVID-19 vaccination efforts, along with our partners. But we do a lot of other things specific to child health. We have a program called the Healthy Life Project, where we're promoting programs with our schools. We are the designated entity for women, infants, and children, what most people know as the WIC program. So every mother comes to the Norwalk Health Department, and we support them during those early years, both before the pregnancy and after. We also are the sexual health clinic. So that's a big issue. We provide education both in our community, in our school system, and we also provide the actual STD testing here on site with the health clinic. We also are the lead poisoning prevention center. Lead prevention and lead poisoning is still relevant in our community, and we have designated nurse practitioners that when we get the report of a lead case in the city of Norwalk from a child, because we know the research let us know a lot of medical issues can happen. And we know there are still very old buildings or families who live in buildings who are that use still lead paint. We mitigate that and work with the families, and we provide that case management and coordination and making sure that young person and that elevated blood level is to the place where we know that young person is healthy and can do and be healthy, because it impacts a lot of things: health, education, learning, etc. And then the immunization action plan. Just last year, pre-COVID, the health department was very instrumental in ensuring that all Norwalkers, especially our young people, meet the state's requirement of being immunized, specifically with immunization and our physicals. So our nurse practitioners are also on the front line working with private practitioners and our federal required for the health clinicians, but also the health department has played a big role in ensuring that all young people who need physicals, we're supporting those efforts as well. And then we have a program, the BMI data report. Research is letting us know that Americans are getting larger. So, and our young people are getting larger. And so we have a program working with the school and Yale, partnering with our schools with healthy eating. We provide the data to the Yale Public Health, and just identify strategy support. And we work with the school nurses and so forth in the school. So this is specifically some of our child health programs that the health department administers outside of COVID, and that we still continue and do presently. Another area is specifically, again, the child and family, is our amazing Norwalk Public Library. there are many, many, many services offered to our children, teens, and families. And we all know we had to respond immediately, and we have a robust online presence where our homework help program, all Norwalkers get that free library card, put that library card into the system, and we have tutoring help, and we're promoting it through our schools under the leadership of Sherelle Harris. All Norwalkers get a free library card. There's a program that every kindergarten automatically gets a free library card. And just recently, because of COVID, under the leadership of Vicki and the team, we were able to work with the Norwalk Norwalk Public Schools, whereas all Norwalk students through their student ID have access and have a library card because of COVID. We have, of course, the amazing research and databases for families who are looking for story time, encouraging young reading and early reading and continue reading. We have Take and Make, so you can stop by, the Norwalk, and we have pre-crafted materials, again, for family time at home, keeping kids active, keeping families active, just an array of activities, which is pretty impressive. A variety of child and teen activities to support learning and reading, access to digital tools. We also have online coding, chess, gaming, and art programs. So these services are available to Norwalkers, and they are free. We also have our appointment program. We know that many programs now are entitlements and eligibility programs. They are often online only, and so we beyond COVID, but because of COVID, individuals and children and families can come in and register and get access to a computer, and you actually can take home a laptop if required, and when it comes with free public Wi-Fi, and I think that's pretty cool. Norwalk Youth Services, I'm not going to go over this too much. We had a full discussion with that, but just to remind that the goal is, and we have been restructuring, so we plan to kind of fully launch late summer. I want to have a press conference to really let the community know who we are, and what we do. But the key goal is responding to the needs of children, youth, and their families through a variety of programs. I talked about the juvenile justice program, which we rebranded Restorative Justice, our information services, our community education, our advocacy, and partnering more, aligning with our parks as partners. So they're labeled as park as partners. The Parks Department is fully their program, but most certainly they serve our youth. So we're really breaking down those silos to really work in concert with our Parks Department. So whatever they're promoting for young people, we're also doing it and with the young people and families that we interface as well. And then again, you all are familiar with the Family Navigation Program. This is a free program made through the generous grants of Dahlia Foundation, the Ritter Foundation, and the Parent Heinrich Foundation, up to 1,000 students. And we have not met that goal yet. So we still have about another 400 families that if they qualify, because the need, it's ebbs and flows. Families may, we work with 500 families, but the program is still active and alive. So, families' needs change over time. So I want to remind our families in Norwalk that if you are struggling with internet, you can reach out to us, and we can help facilitate that to get you free Wi-Fi and hardwire, so that that barrier is removed for that young person to be able to connect to the Wi-Fi and do their online learning. We work with the Norwalk Public Schools, connecting to the digital literacy services, and then specifically from the city side, we're going to ask you, is there anything else we can help you with? And we spoke about that earlier with food, housing, and just connecting families and to resources, because we know when the parents do well, they are in a better position to help their young ones. And then the early childhood office, we hold the finances and under the leadership of Mary Oster. She's the administrator and coordinator through the early childhood office and coordination. So we provide the funding and the oversight to Norwalk's vulnerable children, subsidizing early childhood experiences, because we know the research tells us that if children have early childhood experiences and quality, I might add, it positions them to have successful and be better in school. So this program is, again, and Mary does a fine job. Lastly, I want to thank the Common Council for their funding and for the continued funding. We are partner with the Mid-Fairfield. We provide mental health and trauma support to our most vulnerable. And you all remember last year, Norwalk, there were quite a few young people unaccompanied, and they were experiencing a lot of trauma. But through the city of Norwalk, we're funding the Mid-Fairfield program workers specifically with these children to ensure that their mental health needs are met. And we're also very proud that we are both culturally and linguistically competent so that we're able to provide these services in their native language. And then human relations and fair rent, while it's not a child program, but I wanted to elevate it because it impacts children. When parents have to move from place to place or challenges, it's going to impact children and their families. And so we're reminding Norwalk that our city has a fair rent program. We have a hired attorney that will hear your case. And if there's any wrongdoing or your rights have been violated, there's a process through due process through the Fair Rent Commission to hear the case. And if the commission rules in your favor, there's a binding process that will support you in those efforts. And then just, I wanted to, the Parks and Rec will a variety of activities to meet the needs of young people. And so just want to elevate that the Parks and Recs Department offers a variety of athletic activities throughout the year. They have now launched their play in summer. So encouraging Norwalkers to look online. And if you see anything you like, enroll your child into services. Of course, we all had to adapt. So the numbers are not as high as we like because of the COVID restrictions, but we're proud to say that the services are going forward, giving the restraints and service restrictions that we have to adhere to. This is the information. You can also find us all online. And then Madam Chair, through you, I want to now talk about just the other initiative to give you an update. If you all recall, I remember this conversation downstairs when we talked about the Community Resource Hub. And I said one of the things that I observe in the city of Norwalk, while there are a variety of resources here, and I can say that without exaggerating, they're comprehensive. It was early on when I arrived that there was no one place go to for any Norwalker to say, I need help, where do I go? It doesn't exist. So we are moving along, and we're in the process of interviewing 2 part-time, what we have called community resource specialists. These 2 are hired to help Norwalk, any Norwalker that says, I need help, I'm struggling with this, where do I go? And it's helping Norwalkers throughout their lifespan. So from the babies until our seniors, this office, this department, this team is the designated go-to place, whether you can call. And, once we're able to get back in, you can come in the office and basically, I need help with this. Give me a moment. Let me tell you what's available. Let me tell you what's offered. Also, we know we have a large Spanish-speaking Creole population and other language. So even we're interviewing 5 people, and I'm proud to say that's just an automatic for me, being sensitive to language and cultural competence. So we have a couple of individuals who are bilingual Spanish and bilingual Creole. They look promising. It's important that we meet families and individuals where they are. So we'll be able to offer interpretation, language, and translation assistance. And if we don't have that service, we also have the language access support team. And I used it not too long ago, and actually have someone on the call. So if someone is in front of me, I can still be able to communicate them. And so these are the boxes that when Norwalks come, and we're still forming it. So I'm waiting for the 2 part-time staff to come, and they're going to help kind of put the meat and potatoes to it. But this is the vision, this is the framework, and it's customer service in a way of helping families specifically around social services. But of course, if they come in, we'll say, this department is over here, this department of here. But if you recall, this is one of the biggest needs in area that I saw, that how will we show up and how can we bring value to the existing services and supports? And if you recall, I met with many, over 50, 60 nonprofit executive leaders. So this is also a direct response and a deliverable that I feel very proud of, that we are now moving to deliver on what they identified, what was a need. You also see the Unite Us platform. This is a platform that is used throughout the city, promoted by the Norwalk Hospital. It's a resource and information system, so that when that individual comes into the city, we can say, this is, if you're looking for mental health, push one button. I can tell you everything that's happening in Norwalk if you're looking for recreation. And so again, the community resources is going to update this and fill this database and work with the community to encourage them to get active in this, because the system only works if the nonprofit community is using it. And so this is the service. I'm also proud, because I've also mentioned this when we met early on, is the last bullet to my right. I'm not sure how it looks on your piece, is the designated office hours, swing space. One of the areas that I identified as an opportunity is, while many of the services are available, but many of the services are regional. So as you recall, I've talked quite frankly about, for a Norwalker, if they want to go to a workforce development program, they would have to travel to Bridgeport. For Norwalk right now, currently, the lead rental agency is the Urban League in Stamford. So while the service exists, Norwalkers have access, they would have to go to Norwalk. So through the mayor's office and through corporate counsel, we're working on how can we offer up space free of charge and have designated office hours. For example, the rental program. I want to get the rental program in Norwalk, so Norwalkers know on Tuesdays, the rental organization A will be in City Hall or any other place that I can identify, so they're not traveling to Stamford. While we know many Norwalkers have access and the resources, but we also know many Norwalkers don't have the resources to get on a train, Uber, Cabot, and so forth. So again, my goal is to make it available here for Norwalkers, that they can find it in their hometown. And I'm very excited that many of the organizations that are regional are very excited and very eager to understand how we're going to roll this out and all that, and just very positive that they're open to bringing a staff person, maybe one day a week, maybe 1 or 2 days a week. That's something that we're still working through, but that is definitely an initiative that I want to offer the swing space, specifically nonprofit social service type services that are offered to Norwalkers, but you have to travel to a neighboring town. I want to remove that travel barrier. And so we're moving along in that area, and I'm really excited, and to have a launch date of opening, sometime late summer 21, once I get the team on board and get them to work and help us kind of now move the vision along. And so this just talks more about the Norwalk swing space, partner with nonprofit organizations to deliver programs and services to our community, in our community. And I think I kind of talked about that. And then lastly, the Equity and Justice for All Commission. Again, thank you, Community Services. I think I've been promoting the YouTube, our last YouTube to community, because it was a very, again, a comprehensive Q&A. So it's launched. We are now in our kind of final scope of work process. They will be presenting their kind of full year with the mayor. So we're getting on the calendar. We have corporate legal involved, because the thing that we did anticipate, we want to use technology. So what are the implications for technology and all that kind of stuff? And so we're kind of just finalizing language and make sure, everything's clear and all liability, because their goal is to launch a website and kind of an engagement for our community. But we just want to make sure we do it right and accurate to protect both them and protect us. So we're on those conversations, but they've already started meeting individuals. I'm looking forward for many of them actually reaching out to you in your respective, not only in your common council role, but also in your community role. And they're committed to making this as transparent. That's their goal. They're committed to making this informative and engaging, with the goal of, by the end of the year, presenting a structure, a format of Norwalk's first Equity and Justice for All Commission. And that is it. And then, Madam Chair, just lastly, I don't know who's watching, I just want to just remind Norwalkers that we have been in our COVID-19, which I call vaccine blitz. I want to thank Common Council Member Burnett and Johnson. We actually had 2 sites going on today at Bowtie and Carver Community Center. But I want to remind our residents, the specific sites that you see tonight, these are walk-ups, because we've talked about it on numerous occasions, going through the VAM system, going online, again, being equitable, thinking that in mind. I don't want to assume that all Norwalkers have access to a computer, have access to understand what all this is. So Norwalkers, I want to remind you, we have 2 more days left. We'll be at South Norwalk tomorrow from 1 to 7. The mayor commitment, we wanted to extend evening hours because people are going back to work. So we are excited about that. So we want to be sensitive to that, again, with the equity lens. And then on Friday, the hours are 10 to 4. Again, this is walk up. You can come, no appointment, no questions asked, and get your vaccines. For those who have selected, we will be doing Moderna. We already have the second date already set. So when you get your first shot, you would know exactly to come back to that place. And so we are really excited. I'm proud to say that through the walk-ups alone, we've already did over 500 vaccine shots. This is not the bow tie, but through the walk-ups alone, over 500 Norwalkers have already. I don't have today's numbers. I'll get them tomorrow morning. This is both at the main library. And I also just, Madam Chair, want to publicly thank the board of the Norwalk Public Library for immediately endorsing and supporting this. And I also want to thank the teams at the Norwalk Library, because I called them on Thursday and said, we need to make this happen on Monday. And under Sherelle Harris's leadership and the entire team, they delivered, they responded. So I also want to publicly thank them for their immediate responsive of making this happen. And we're looking forward to being at South Norwalk tomorrow and Friday. This includes my update. I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for that update. It's really encouraging to hear 500 people were immunized, and that doesn't even include today's number. So in 2 days, that was 500 people to the walk up. So that's a great service. I actually, I'm very excited about the Community Resource Hub finally being able to get started. I know that, when we first met, Lamont, that was one of the things that you talked about, that the need was so great for something like this. And it's, COVID really set us back with that. So I'm glad to see that that's moving forward. Does anyone have any questions or comments about any particular aspects of the update? Mr. Burnett?
Oh, thank you. Just 2 words: excellent and awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can echo that. I mean, it's just, the need for your position and you being the right person for this position, we knew we needed it, but now that we have you and you are coordinating these efforts to, reach our most valuable resource, which is our people, all of our people, and make sure that needs are met, the focus on the children, because, when children's needs are met, then they can grow and learn and thrive and be successful members of our community. So it's, thank you so much for your work, Lamont.
Thank you for your support.
Mr. Hoovelman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I say also amazing work that you do, Lamont, and what you do for the city. The collective action that you bring and bringing everyone together is amazing, and I commend you. I think it's fantastic. It's a feather in our cap. I have a question though. What's the life of the grant that's funding the Family Navigators? And is that something that's going to be able to continue? Because that program seems to be quite valuable, and I'm hoping that we can keep that thing going in perpetuity and get those additional 400 families to utilize it. Does that have a life to it, an end date, or is it something that seems to be able to go on?
That's a great question, and thank you. So this was identified as a pilot program. However, part of the grant funding that we receive is an evaluation. So we're also looking for, and the funders want to see that evaluation piece. So we have an external evaluator who's actually evaluating it. And I most certainly will be eager to share that with you. So we're hoping through this process, I think that we've made an impact, but the evaluation will inform us. And so we've already begun conversations. And from that last conversation with our funders, they're looking forward to hearing the evaluation. And I'll share it in this way. It makes sense, how do we quantify that this was important? So, an evaluator is critical, but I'm excited that we early on, we had an evaluation component right at the beginning. And it's going to tell us, and it's also going to tell us where we can tweak and where we can improve upon. And we will have those conversations with our funders. But I can tell you from those conversations, they continue to be engaged. They continue to be supportive, but that conversation about continuation will be contingent around the evaluation and how they feel moving forward. So we have, but the funding program allows us to go through till September.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you again, Lamont.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the discussion and approval of the grants coordinator position. Is there a motion? Mr. Sacchinelli. Before we move into this, I do just want to point out that the committee does approve the language of the job description. This does not need council approval. It will not go on to the council. So I just wanted to make that clear. And so, we had charged Mr. Burney for having this ready for us this month. And so we do have the job description to discuss. Mr. Burney, let me just turn it over you to introduce. I mean, I think one of the things that we do want to make sure that we address, going back to Ms. Lauricella's comments about this being, I mean, she had quite a few comments, but because we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, the possibility of at least eventually this becoming a full-time position. So I think we'd like to discuss that a little bit.
Well, I think that's a to be determined exercise. This, as we have experienced with this job in particular and with the reorganization overall, it's fluid. It's not set in stone forever and a day. Things change, circumstances change, workloads change, and we've tried to adjust throughout the whole process. Josh's position is a good example where when we established that position, we talked about, well, maybe this, maybe that. And 2.5, 3 years later, we presented to you last month, to separate out the communications functions from these grant coordinator functions, made Josh the full-time communications coordinator, and we'll have a communications director, and now we'll have a part-time grants manager. And that's what we have today, based upon what we know. We think that's the best way to address this situation. We do not have the funding, nor are we asking for a full-time position yet. That could change down the road, but as you summarized earlier, this committee asked me to bring back what the position description will look like for the grants coordinator part-time position, and that's what we've included in the packet for tonight for you guys to review and for you all to say, okay, and then tomorrow or Friday, we'll post that job and begin the recruitment process.
Questions? Mr. Sacchinelli?
In the last meeting, I know you said that there's opportunity for this to evolve, but in the last meeting, we were talking about finding better ways to track the grants. Could we make that as a responsibility as the written into this of grant tracking? And I'm sorry.
If you look at the position description, it's exactly what it says.
Where does it say that? Does it clearly say that they're going to develop the tracking?
Let me turn on my light.
Okay.
Is that
That
under,
could be-
is that
that could
under
be missing it.
additional duties? Identifies materials for and maintains a central grants library?
Right.
Is that what that
Yes.
means?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And then what's the definition of good for this role? Are we going to be setting quotas, or what's that look like? Or it's just thoughts. I know it doesn't have to be built into the description, but just for discussion purposes.
I have no understanding from Henry or anyone else that there'll be quotas or anything like that set for this position description, for this person in this position. Could that evolve into it? It could, but as of right now, I have no knowledge that that's going to be one of the agenda items for whoever we recruit for this position.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't want to set a quota?
I don't know the answer to that question, and I would want to leave that to Henry, the budget director, in concert with Josh and this person as to whether that's the appropriate measurement of how this job is, how the person in this job is performing.
Thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Johnson?
What would be the salary? Thank you, Chair. What would be the salary for this position? Because I know it's a part-time that excludes benefits, pension, all that.
We're prepared to pay, depending upon who we get, the quality of the candidate, their experience, anywhere from $35 to $40 an hour.
I guess that speaks to what Councilmember Sacchinelli was saying, that at $35 to $40 an hour, an effective grants manager could likely pay for their position very quickly, based on experience. I make that assumption. I hope I'm right. Yeah.
It's a significant financial leap from a part-timer at $40 an hour to a full-time position. It's probably
Right.
in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $100,000 difference. So the approach that we want to take now is to do the part-time position. We have the funding for that. And as you all know, in the budget cycle, the mayor's instructions to everyone were, we're not adding additional headcount if we can absolutely avoid it. So we're trying to avoid adding another FTE and see how we can do with a part-timer.
Yeah, and I guess to my point that this should be a real value add for the city, because at that hourly rate on a part-time salary, we're going to see a real return on investment here, hiring an effective grants manager. I guess that gets to my other question. Is there a reason why it's called a coordinator and not a manager? I understand why it's not a director, but yeah.
It's because the way the city has approached obtaining grants, as Lamont just went through with all of you, is that the resident expertise and knowledge to apply for grants sits in the various departments. And we do not want to take the approach of having one person in the city responsible for writing grants for everyone from Lamont to the fire department, to the health department, to the police department, to DPW. We think it's a better approach to have those departments with their own subject matter experts be the primary people responsible for writing the grants. And this coordinator, at least for now, will do exactly what the title says, coordinate that process.
Okay.
Hopefully, as Councilman Sacchinelli said, synthesize it, pull it together, put it into a readable catalog of here's what we've done, here's what we're doing, and have that as the basis for moving forward.
And then one more question. I see that the duties include reporting on grant activity, but in terms of actual grants reporting to funders, is that the department's own job? Or
Yes.
Okay, so the coordinator will
Yes.
have nothing to do with getting reporting to the funders.
Right, if the grant requires the recipient to produce a report on the use of that money, that's not going to sit on this part-timers. It doesn't now, and it won't sit on this person's desk.
So all that data lives in each department. There's no
That's correct.
centralized.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Sacchinelli, you had a question?
Yeah, I guess I'll say it publicly, but I think it's more to Mr. Bernie's point. It's more to follow up with Henry on. But what I imagine this person should be doing is ultimately we would be tracking probably year over year, or look at how many grants we qualified for last year if we don't already have that. But I think over time, to be able to define success based on what Councilperson Johnson had stated, there should be, I do believe there should be some type of quota, because if the main lift is going to be ultimately taken on by the departments, which makes sense to me, I get that argument. But if the departments are writing their own, they're writing their own, basically identifying it, writing it, submitting it, then this person is left doing something else. And what would that be? And in order to define the fact that they're going to be adding value, we should probably have some type of quota above what we're already bringing in from the departmental grants, if that makes sense. So I, I know it's not for you, but I just wanted to say that with the group.
Sure. I'll relay that to Henry.
Thank you.
You know, I think that one of the things that we'd like to see is this person, okay, yes, they're going to be coordinating with all of the other departments, but, you know, say a department, community services, for example, still new and, you know, operating on a pretty, you know, shoestring budget, frankly, at this point in time, you know, say, you know, there's an initiative or something that, you know, they'd like to, you know, something new they'd like to do. Could they go to this grants coordinator and say, hey, you know, I really need some funding for, you know, this new initiative. Can you search and find what grants might be available? I think, you know, we want to make sure that new grants are going to be happening, and it speaks to the quota, I think, but, you know, we just really want to see every avenue that's available reached.
I don't think myself or Henry would disagree with that approach at all. I think that should be one of the, that level of cooperation should be inherent in this position.
And then what I'm wondering about, like, you know, the central grants library, you know, do we want to add the word tracking, or maybe there's a more appropriate word to, you know, because I think that that's a frustration right now, that we don't have that system set up to really know exactly, you know, where we're at with the different grants. And is that the right thing to do? Add that word in there somehow?
That's perfectly fine.
Accountability, maybe.
I don't have any objection to it. I was trying to find exactly where you were talking about on the position description, but
I see it in under additional duties. I might have missed it under general duties, but identifies materials for and maintains a central grants library for use by city departments.
and you want something in there that requires the tracking of these grants.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
The library for tracking and
Right.
for use. Okay. Mr. Burnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When in looking at the general duties, it appears that the main role is based on assisting the departments in terms of pursuing grants and completing grant requirements. I guess the question is, should we include wording where this individual will proactively go after grant opportunities as opposed to reacting to input that comes from the departments only? I read this as they're basically going to take the lead from the city departments when they go through, as you stated, their subject matter experts goes out and they say, here's a grant opportunity that falls within our department and our mission. Let's go after it. And then they pull this individual in to assist with completing the grant process. Is there an opportunity for this individual to not sit back and wait, but be proactive as well in terms of looking for grants? And when they identify those grants, go to the necessary departments and say, hey, found this grant that sits right within your mission. Let's work together to try to get this grant. Is there a possibility to include that wording somewhere where they're more proactive in terms of grant opportunities?
I think it says that already. Maybe
Where-
I'm reading too much into it.
Where
But-
do you see that?
The first three words are assist in identifying, acquiring, and implementing grant programs in partnerships with all city departments, boards, and agencies. Further on, identifying new sources of funding and assisting city departments in the preparation of new and existing grant applications. So I don't disagree with your overture. I just don't know what words you want to add that aren't already included in the first couple of sentences.
Maybe I'm getting lost because I see assist everywhere throughout the paragraph, as opposed to being straightforward and say, proactively pursue grant opportunities.
I
Which to
see it
me,
in the second sentence.
which to me is different wording from assist.
Mr. Burnett, I see it in the second sentence, but I wonder if we can, make it even a little more specific. So in the second sentence where it says administers activities of the city in compiling an inventory of existing grants, coordinating current grant programs, maintaining reporting requirements, and here, identifying new sources of funding. So, maybe that's where we can add the proactively identify new sources of funding. Mr.
Can I make a
Sachin.
suggestion there? Yeah,
Sure.
maybe we do actually put must achieve minimum quota, because that would achieve what Mr. Burnett's asking for. So essentially, if we define an increase that we need to set year over year, then it doesn't really matter how they do it, whether they're supporting the existing departments or they're proactively going out to achieve it. Ultimately, it's going to define what the division of good is for us. And then if they're not achieving it, it actually puts something right in the job description where we can replace them, which I think is important.
Well, first of all, it's a part-time job, so they're at-will employees. So we replace them for any reason but an illegal reason. And you typically do not see in a position description those type of objectives listed in the position description about meeting those type of performance objectives. So if your concern is getting rid of someone who's not performing, since it's a part-time, non-unionized, non-ordinance at-will employee, we can let them go tomorrow if we want.
Well, no, sorry, no, not just that. I think we do want to encourage them to do well, and by setting a target, and the target wouldn't be written in here. Ultimately, quota would be defined by Henry and the team there. But we're setting a path that you will have to meet some type of minimum requirement, and will give them the flexibility to take whatever course is necessary, whether it is, to Mr. Burnett's point, where they need to proactively go out and seek these new grants for themselves. Maybe they're going to help apply for them or apply for them themselves, or maybe they're going to pass grants into the departments, or they're going to keep the departments on schedule, because I get requests through the departments the day before and we have to do special meetings for, right? So I think there's a lot of nuances to what this role could be, but what we're doing is we're saying, this is your North Star. You need to find a way to achieve it, whatever that may be. I'm not saying to set the quota. Henry would set the quota. We're just going to say that there will be some quota.
That will require me having a conversation with Henry about whether or not he wants to manage this position before I can say, okay, he wants to manage this position that way based upon those criteria before I can say, yes, we'll do that.
Understandable.
Ms. Johnson.
So that brings up a question. Who would this person report to then, Mr. Burney?
It reports to the Director of Management and Budgets with a dotted line to Henry.
Okay. And that would be Angela Fogel? If I
Yes.
Okay. And then I have a suggestion. You could take it or leave it, but I agree with Councilmember Burnett about having the language be more proactive, active, punchier, even that word. But if you get rid of assist in the first instance of it under general duty and just start with identify, acquire, and implement grant programs, to me that does kind of lend more gravitas to it. I understand as well under additional duties, it says assist in program evaluation with city department heads. That's what I was kind of getting at. How do you envision that happening specifically? Like, what would that look like?
The way we have this whole grants process set up is that the driving force for identifying grants and applying for grants resides in the departments. This is a citywide coordinator of that process. So if you take out the word assist, you change the entire nature of this job, which is not the way we have it set up. That would be more of a full-time job.
Well,
I have.
Could be, but yeah, okay, it was just a suggestion, but to my other question,
I don't need to talk to Henry about inserting the word proactively seeks,
okay,
right? I do need to talk to him about putting in a position description, some set of criteria that he will have to manage this position by.
got it.
I couldn't do that without the department head being aware of that, but I can add a word like proactive where it was suggested.
Yeah, and if you could just, I'll maybe now is a better time for my colleague's question, but if at some point you could respond about the program evaluation piece, because that can be very time consuming. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd really like to see us get to a consensus tonight and be able to move this so the position can be posted and you know, we can move on it. So Mr. Burnett, you have something.
Yes, thank you. So I see now where it says identifying new sources of funding. If we could pull those few words out and add as the second sentence, proactively identify new source of funding, period, that puts an emphasis on the fact that not only do you assist departments, but there is an expectation that you will look for new grant opportunities. Let's not have it lost within the second sentence amongst 5 or 6 other tasks. That's a key element that I think there's a consensus that we'd like to see this role be part of. Let's pull that out as a separate sentence as the second bullet and say proactively identify new sources of funding. Just a suggestion.
Okay, done.
Okay,
So it will now read, administer activities, coordinate programs, and maintain reporting requirements, period. Excuse me, proactively identify new sources of funding, period. Assist city departments in the preparation of new and existing grant applications. How's that, Councilman Burnett?
I would agree with that.
okay. Okay, so as of now, we are changing those sentences, and then under additional duties, identifies materials for, maintains a central grants library for tracking for use by city departments.
So
Mr. Burnett, sorry.
yes, so before we close this out, I would like to discuss what will it take, or what are the measurements, the situation, et cetera, that we would look for to move this from being a part-time grant coordinator to a full-time grant writer? What are the key items that we would want to see, or we should suggest to see in making that decision that this role should now be a full-time grant writer position as opposed to just a part-time grant coordinator? I think it's important for us to understand what are we looking for to make that happen. If we don't know, then you know, we won't be able to ask the question, you know, how can we make this a full-time position? What are the criteria that would merit this to be a full-time position?
Are you asking me that question?
Or whoever can answer.
Well, the city isn't asking this to be a
Right.
full-time, you know, we're not asking tonight for it to be a full-time
Right,
position.
I know that. I'm not
Okay.
saying,
So-
I'm not saying this is it, this is what it is, but I'm saying as we go forward, what are the set of criteria, because it'll come back to this committee, that we should be looking for or asking about that would warrant a valid discussion on whether the city of Norwalk should have a full-time grant writer position?
I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. I think that that's part of the process we're trying to move forward here, establishing this position, get them up and running, let them pay full attention to it, not as part of their job as Josh's was doing, but as their part-time job, that's the exclusive duty, and see where that goes. And if that evolves into, as we've seen other positions evolve into it exposes a need for a full-time position or to change the process that we currently use in the city to monitor, apply for, and get grants. I think that's all stuff that's down the road.
I think that's the point I'm trying to get to. When we say it evolves, what are we looking for it to evolve to? To get, how do we generate the discussion and say the part-time role has evolved to what? And as a result of that, what? We should be considering a full-time grant writing position. I'm trying to get to, this doesn't happen on its own. So what are the set of circumstances that would warrant a discussion about taking a part-time position and make it a full-time position?
Can I just make a recommendation here so that we can reassess at a certain point? Like, how about 6 months, 6 to 9 months after this person is hired and is, really, into the position, we get an update about how it's going, if there's new grants coming in, if they're, actively pursuing and bringing in new grants, as well as, coordinating with the departments already. And I think a couple other points that I want to just go back to the beginning of this discussion, which is, especially during COVID and this current budget season, the mayor has been remiss to add any full-time positions. And I think that we are all aware that there are other departments that have great needs for positions. I think about, public works with great needs for junior engineers, and, that just has not happened. I think the benefit with this grants position, where we have the leeway, is that the grants position, eventually pays for itself, right? So maybe in 6 to 9 months, we'll get a feel for where that's going, and then we can look at it for the next budget season.
Madam Chair, I think that's what I'm getting, if we look, what are we looking for 6 to 9 months from now? That's the point. And maybe we don't have the answer tonight. And that's valid, that's fair. But we should have an answer, because if we're going to say we're going to review this in 6 to 9 months, what are we looking for? What progress are we looking for to get to the point of having the discussion that would advocate for a full-time grant writer position? That's the point I'm trying to get at. I mean, to say we're going to evaluate it in 6 months, what are we looking for?
Mr. Roberts.
I'm guessing that Mr. Burnett is basically stating, Ray, that I'm guessing as far as like the reoccurring grants. So say if we got a grant 2 years ago, do we still have that grant again 2 years later? And if we got that grant 2 years later, what kind of grants are we receiving now? So basically some type of tracking data to where we see, okay, we got $90,000 worth of grants. Next year, let's see if we can get $100,000 worth of grants. So some type of like tracking place where we could find out, is it really working? Because we don't want to sit here and put somebody through a part-time position and then they come and give us triple the grants. And then they look for, okay, I need a lot more money now because I'm giving you guys a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I'm bringing the city a lot of money now. So like, I honestly get what he's saying as far as like, we need some type of tracking proposal, because that person might be with you for like a year and realize, okay, I got these guys a lot of money. Is there a full-time position?
I think I agreed when to add the tracking phraseology to the description. And I do think that's a significant portion of what this person is going to do. tracking the grants. Grants change from year to year. They ebb and they flow, which is why I'm not sure a quota is the right way to do it, but I'd leave that to Henry and the people that are experts in this. But I don't disagree with the notion that the tracking aspect of grants applied for, grants received, how we doing with grants overall is a critical function of this position.
And I think that that will be information that we'll have for the first time.
Right.
We have not been able to track in an efficient and effectual way the amount of grants that we receive on a yearly basis. So, we'll have that information for the first time. Maybe that's the starting point. Ms. Revelous, you had something? You're muted. I mean, you don't appear to be muted, but oh, you're having that microphone problem again. If you want to type it in the chat. No, okay. Mr. Sachinelli.
I just have a question for my own edification. Is there a reason why we asked for a driver's license for this role?
I wondered that too.
I'm just curious. It's not a bad thing. I don't see why it's a bad thing. I was just wondering why.
It's sort of a standard line on every position description. I don't know why. I don't know a specific reason why it's there.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was like maybe an operational or logistical reason, like
No.
we have to have.
Okay. Ms. Johnson.
So what I'm seeing here in the general duties, a lot of it is assisting, but then a lot of it, the language seems to be very much about like contract execution, contract compliance, budget, and then this audit of programs, I think, is directly related to program evaluation, likely. So is it fair to say that this is an area that's really needed for us? I guess another way to ask is, have we had any issues in the past about lack of compliance that then led us to lose some grants? Is that something that's been happening?
Not to the best of my knowledge. What you're looking at in this position description is almost exactly the same words that we extracted from the old position description
Okay.
that had to do with grants coordination functions, not communications functions. So
Okay.
there's not a lot of new verbiage in this. It's what has existed in
Okay.
this grants coordinator position description for years.
Okay. Thank you for that. And just one quick follow-up. Hypothetically, let's say a department, it can happen to the best of us, like drops the ball on a grant deadline, can't get an extension. Is that the onus then here on this grants coordinator? Is that an issue in their purview, or is it like whose responsibility? Where's the accountability there? Where
I
would
think
you?
the accountability would be on this person's desk and the department's desk for missing a deadline like that.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. Thanks very much.
Anything else? Mr. Roberts.
I got one question. To my knowledge, we had a grant writer before, right, Ray?
Some
Not
years
that I'm
ago,
aware of.
Okay.
some years ago,
Okay.
there was, I think actually, Mr. Bernie, it was before your time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I
but
don't
if-
know, before my time as well, so. I
If
will-
if you're talking about the woman who was in the mayor's office,
Kelly, Kate, somebody said it last time.
Catherine, maybe?
no, her title was grants coordinator.
Okay,
Okay,
That's what,
got it. Thank you, Ray.
to the best of my knowledge, the primary responsibility for pulling together grants has resided in the various departments where the subject matter experts reside.
okay. Ms. Revelous, I think I might have heard you there for a moment. Did you?
Oh,
There you
you
are.
can hear
Okay.
me now?
Mhm, yep.
I think my question was kind of answered, but it was towards more the examples you gave, like for the positions needed that we know about. And would it be onus if, in 6 months, we had money for positions needed? Because that's another thing about like grants writers, like as long as they're not like, don't become nonprofit bandits and only paying for their position type of thing. Like, would that be an onus too of measuring them? Like if they're bringing in funds for positions we're looking for as well in 6 months? Is that something that could be measured?
I imagine it can be measured, but you know, the business right now, the city is not striving towards the business model of a centralized full-time grants writer, right? That's not the objective. Could this position someday evolve into it? Maybe, but that's not where we're at today. Where we're at today is the business model relative to grants is what we want to have, is what we have in place, but for the grants coordinator who's supposed to pull all this stuff together and be able to produce reports for you guys, for the mayor's office, for anybody else who wants to look at where are we with reports, what help does the subject matter expert in the department need to get the grant process moving through the administrative side of it, because the subject matter experts in the various departments may not know all the administrative side of it, which is what this person is going to be doing. So that's our business model. It's not a centralized grant writer office.
I understand that. It's just that in the idea of what are we measuring to make it look like full term down the road. You know what I'm saying? That's more what I'm saying. Because I can understand on a coordinator side exactly how you said that, how it can be part-time, because I'm just making sure you're all in line. But as a community, if we're looking for innovative ways to truly pay for structures and keep taxpayers happy, someone who brings that, we could be like, wow, you know what, this may be a key person that we might look at because of 6 to 8 months, because they did this, this, and this. I think we're just looking for, I think some of us are looking for, hopefully they bring some innovation to their part-timeness, while I understand the part-timeness of the coordinator, if that makes sense.
Right. So if I ever come back to this committee looking for a full-time grants writer position, you can bet that I will bring a document that shows this part-timer brought in $18 million we didn't get before. So I hear that loud and clear.
Right. But that's all.
Mr. Burnett.
So, thank you. So to that point, what would be the differences between a grant writer job description and a grant coordinator job description?
The grant coordinator is not writing the grants. The grant coordinator is not describing the city's need for an epidemiologist because of X, Y, and Z medical circumstances. The grant coordinator is not doing that. The grant writer is. The grant writer is writing the need for a new fire truck because of X, Y, and Z improvements in fire trucks. The grant coordinator is not doing that.
But a question, if this grant coordinator is looking
I'm
for
not
and
following.
finding a new grant, for example, wouldn't they be writing that particular grant? Or would it be turned back to the department? Would they, I mean, I'm assuming coordinating, you know, might involve some of the grant writing.
It would involve some of the grant writing on the administrative end of it.
Okay.
Yes, but on the subject matter stuff of it, I mean, to get a grant, there has to be some city department that's going to use that money. It's not going to be the grant writers department. It's not going to be the CFO unless it happens to be coincidentally, but it's going to be one of the operating departments that identifies a need for, or someone identifies a need for money that's available through a grant that requires a subject matter expert in that department to fill in the blanks on this is what we do, this is what our need is, this is how we can use your money. And then this person will coordinate that overall process aspect.
I think I got it now.
Okay. Ms. Johnson?
That just makes me think about, okay, so this person will potentially be teaching grant writing skills, if you want to say teach to folks. Like, in my experience, one of the most difficult things as a program director is to sync up your outcomes with your program. Like, how do I know that I've achieved my goals? And that's like a skill you have to learn, that grant writers are quite good at quantifying this. So do you think that that's something departments are going to need help with, that this person is therefore here to help them on that?
Yes, I think any level of expertise in grant writing this coordinator can bring will be of assistance. But there are people in all of our operating departments that have been writing grants for some time. It's part of their core responsibilities. So yes, is the answer to your question, but I don't know that there is a desperate need for educating the grant writing employees, subject matter experts right now. And if there is, we can make arrangements to get that, but I am not aware of that level of need.
So they feel confident in the departments. Yeah, I'm just
Right.
curious if this person would be that resource to them, should they need it. And it sounds like yes.
Yeah, I would say yes is the answer to that question.
Okay, cool.
And if not, and I just saw it today, where was it? Somewhere in the hundreds of emails I got today, one of the many vendors that emails me is holding a grants writing seminar. So the rudimentary grant writing skills are available for a price any day of the week.
Okay, anything else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Could you, I'm curious as to why it says fluency in Spanish language skills is preferred. Why is that listed for this position?
Probably because it was on the prior position description. Do I know of a specific need for it? I do not know of a specific need for it.
Be removed.
I would think that would, if somebody was reading this required knowledge, skills, and abilities, and they got to that point and they did not speak Spanish, they would probably think they would not be a viable candidate.
All right, well, my office didn't put it in. Let me find out if it was just a carryover from the prior position description. If it is, and no one can identify a specific, if Henry can identify a specific need for that, we'll cross it out.
Please.
Yeah, I think that that's a good idea. Yeah, regarding communications, that's of course preferred, when it was both job descriptions. Yeah, so we'd strike that, or yeah, or use a different word than preferred. But I think striking it is probably
Right, okay.
the best thing. Okay. Okay.
So
final-
are we going to get a clean version of this position description before we vote on it? Or are we going to
Oh.
just vote on it based upon the verbal input that was given today?
I mean, I want to reiterate, I'd like to see us get to consensus tonight so that this position can get posted, for a couple of reasons. One, because in the meantime, Josh is still doing two jobs. And we need for him to focus on communications. And, we want to get this up and running. So I'd like to see us move this forward if we can. So I think the other language we're comfortable with. Right? Right? The changes that we made. But this is probably the one that's most up in the air because we're talking about striking it, according to, what Henry comes back with. So I
I'll
think,
strike, well, listen, in order to move the process along, I will strike it.
okay,
Because I agree with you that we should get this posted this week so that we can start the recruitment exercise.
okay, is everyone comfortable with that? Mr. Burnett, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so, so let's go ahead and call for a vote on the approval of the grants coordinator position with the changes in the language. First, second sentence and under general duties, administers activities of the city and compiling an inventory of existing grants, coordinating current grant programs, maintaining reporting requirements, period. Proactively identifying new sources of funding, period. Assisting city departments in the preparation of new and existing grant applications. And then under additional duties, identifies material for and maintains a central grants library for tracking and for use by city departments. And striking under required knowledge, skills, and abilities, fluency in Spanish language skills preferred. All in favor?
Oh,
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So again, just, it passes unanimously. This does not need to move to the council for a council vote, but it gives Mr. Burney the opportunity to get this posted and get someone hired.
Great,
Okay,
thank you.
very good. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Ms. Revolus beats us tonight. All in favor? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.